I had one of those moments where I was like, dude, I'm wasting my time. There's no way I'm ever going to have the money to do this. There's no way I'm ever going to get good enough. There's no way. This is just not going to work for me. I might as well just stay on my tractor all the time. And then you say that, and then it's like a split personality. And then immediately 2 hours after, you get remorse. And you're like, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. And so I had one of those moments immediately after, and I started kind of researching sports psychology.
Huh.
In that process of researching people that are really good at the mind game of any kind of athletic, basketball, football, golf, whatever, I started noticing that most of the people that had the biggest impact in sports, they dealing with the same thing I did, came from nothing, didn't grew up rich, really had the worst situation possible.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, there's people that are doing really great things that are in a lot worse shape than I am. And like I got fascinated by it. I was like, almost every person that I came across that was really good, that peak performance, the best in the game, they're almost every single one of them had a story. Then parents died, single parent home, or maybe poverty stricken. I'm like, dude, I have none of that. And that's kind of embarrassing that I have 2-parent home, mom, dad, didn't grow up poor, got to go to school, don't have any debt. I was scared to death of alcohol and drugs when I was a teenager, which was a blessing. What excuse do you have? Why can't you do something great? Hey guys, I'm Brian Latimer, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
This is episode number 28 with FLW Tour Pro Brian Latimer. Brian Latimer caught my eye with a short little episode on Instagram where he took a young man fishing. It really, really got me interested in just what makes this guy tick. Really liked him from that video, wanted to get to know him. I've got some friends that do know him, and we set it up. So really look forward to this conversation. And once we sat down, started talking, you know what? It got better and better. Just did. I think you're really going to like this podcast. I liked it and look forward to doing it with Brian again. It was really cool and wish him all the best. That one's coming at you right after I tell you about all the normal stuff I have to tell you about. Send us an email at podcast@saltwaterexperience. You can suggest guests. You can tell me, that you liked the previous podcast, that you didn't like the previous podcast. You can even suggest some questions that you would like to hear me ask some of our future guests. So that's a great way to get me. You can also tag me on Instagram, Tom_Rowland. You can tag our Saltwater Experience account on Instagram. The best way to get a hold of us, that's the social media platform that I prefer. And if I do happen to be on social media, it's probably on Instagram. So if you want to do that, that'd be awesome. Love to hear from you. Also, we're going to acknowledge the fan of the week, and I'm going to get this fan of the week from a random guy that has, or person who has left a review on iTunes. The reviews on iTunes, as well as the ratings, are really super important. As I read more articles about this, the more you can rate and review the podcast, the more it helps to get other people to see it. It's kind of like sharing it. And ratings and reviews really help the podcast to get to more people. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And the fan of the week is my good friend, Greg Allen. And he was nice enough to leave a very kind review and a very kind review and a 5-star rating on iTunes, and it goes like this. Great new podcast. I've known Tom for 20 years as my wife and I fished with him on our honeymoon in Key West. After having over 20 years in the guiding industry and all the thousands of podcast-like conversations he's had on his boat, I'm super happy he's decided to take this on as a new challenge and share this side of himself. I'm a big fan of podcasts anyway, and I enjoy this one the most. Give it a listen and you'll be hooked. All right, man. So that's really cool. Greg Allen, really awesome dude, and helped me more than most people will know. That'll be another podcast that I might be able to do with him one of these days about how he helped me to get ready for the Great Outdoor Games a long, long time ago. But Greg, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I had actually forgotten that that's how I met you, was you and your wife came and fished with me on your honeymoon. Wow, that's a long time ago. I'm glad to know that that trip went well and you're still married. All right, man. We've got Brian Latimer coming your way. Want to thank you for listening, and I hope you're going to really enjoy this one. I know I did. Thank you. All right, Brian Latimer.
Yes,
How
sir.
you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man. I'm glad to be here.
Are you?
Yeah.
And this is we're meeting at the ICAST show in Orlando. We found some time. I've been trying to track you down for quite some time. We haven't been able to make our schedules work, but we did get to meet each other in person, and then found a little time to do this at the ICAST show. But you've been. Did you have a good experience at ICAST this year?
It's always a good experience here. You know, it's as a kid, you see all this stuff on TV, and you hear about it and read about it in books, and to actually get here and see it, feel it, touch it, and meet the people involved, you know, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm always never quite sure how to answer that question when somebody says they have a good show. I was like, I think so.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of stuff I like, you know, so it's, as far as I know, it was good.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. How many years have you been coming to this?
This year would be the 4th year
Okay.
that I've been here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I thought it was probably the biggest I've ever seen it. For anybody that doesn't know what it is, the ICAST show it's a dealer show. It's not really open to the public. It's really designed as a place that each of the manufacturers comes and displays their whole product line for the following year, and you know the shops or the big accounts can come there and look at it, touch it, feel it, and then make their order.
Yeah.
It turns into something far different than that.
A lot of
in
times.
fact, it's a good place for anybody that wants to meet with a lot of people to come and meet with everybody they need to.
Yeah, everybody in the fishing industry is here. Well, like you were saying, I think a lot of your retailers are coming here to see what they want to pick up and carry in their retail stores for the next season. And of course, as anglers here, our job is to help push a lot of that product. So that's what we're here talking as much as we can for the 3 days. A lot of talking, a lot of listening to fishing stories and all of that involved as well.
So what's your story? What's your fishing story? How do you end up where you are? And you're a professional bass angler, right?
Right.
You're fishing on the FLW?
FLW tour.
Only the FLW?
I fish the Bass Opens, but the FLW tour is my baby.
Okay, so how does this happen? How old are you? How old are you?
I'm 35. 35 years old. Man, that is a long story. I think you said you only have an hour here. No, it would take longer than that to tell you my whole story.
We got a long time, man.
I grew up in a fishing family. It's just a part. I grew up in rural parts of South Carolina. Where I'm from is Belton, South Carolina. It's my town. And my dad, my family, I don't think there's anybody in my family that doesn't fish to some capacity. But my dad, for whatever reason, got into the competitive aspect of bass fishing in the 70s, late after high school, you know, late 70s, early 80s. He found tournament fishing in the 80s, fished really hard, tournament fisherman in the late 80s, early 90s. And of course, I was born, I'm an 80s baby, so I come along in that era, and I don't ever really remember not fishing. I always fished my entire life. And of course, just being exposed to all of that at a young age, I was just a weird kid. I liked fishing. Fishing is cool now.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I think it was certainly when I grew up, it was far more common to spend your time alone fishing, which is what I did. I went down to the Tennessee River and I would sit on this dock by myself, right? And then sometimes there'd be other people around, but I was certainly not scared to sit there by myself. I find that to be a little uncommon today. Like fishing is cool in certain ways, but I find a lot of kids are not spending their time that way.
No, not at all. It's definitely growing up in middle school, high school, and during the 90s. It wasn't as socially accepted, and that's kind of what I mean by cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't as socially accepted as it is now, because now you got high school fishing team, college fishing teams. So now it's embraced a little bit better. When I was 14, 15 years old, guess kind of weird when you want to get home on Friday evening early so you can wake up early and go fishing on Saturday morning. That was me, and it kind of wasn't cool. You get a little bit of flack about that,
Mm.
and that during that time. And so I fished all the way through school, fished all the way through high school, and when I got out of high school, I always had this ambition to be a professional angler. I didn't know how I could get there or how all the pieces would come together. I always had that ambition, and I got out of high school. I went to technical school simply because I didn't want to have to move away from home, leave my boat at home, and not be able to fish
What kind
through
of
the.
technical school?
I have associate's degree in horticulture. I went to Spartanburg Tech, which is close to where I live. I drove an hour to school back and forth every day for 2 years. I decided to do that because I knew I didn't want to. I couldn't stand to not fish.
Mhm.
I knew that
So
was.
you thought that horticulture, how did you think that that was going to help you
Oh,
fish?
well, let me back up to that. I'm glad you asked that. So, my family owns a landscaping business.
Okay.
So, landscaping that's the only other job I've had besides fishing my entire life.
Yeah.
I've never applied for a job anywhere. So I worked in our family landscaping company. I wanted to stay in that because that was the only job that I could see that would allow me the flexibility to fish when I wanted to. So I got an associate's degree in horticulture. That allowed me, only 2 years in there. I came out with no debt.
Yeah.
So I could buy my own boat. I could go fishing when I wanted to. So I took that route. And as soon as I got done with horticulture degree at Spartanburg Tech, I went at it hard. And ever since from 2004 up until to today, it's been a never-ending chase to make a living fishing.
Hmm.
Now, that's a very, very short-winded version of it because there was a lot of stopping and starting and, oh, no, this is never going to happen and all of that in that mix from 2004 to 2018. But it's finally starting to snowball.
Yeah.
After all that, you always hear that plus one, and then all of a sudden everything starts to balloon. And I think now it's starting to snowball a little
Well, that's
bit.
good. So, just in that story, do you think that getting the associate's degree in horticulture really gave you the confidence to really go for it in the fishing because now you had something that you could fall back on? Because it kind of sounded like that. Like once you got it, then that's when you really took off.
Not necessarily. I didn't want to graduate from high school and not go to school because for so many people, school is your way out. I didn't grow up rich, but I didn't grow up poor either. We were a very middle class, income family. Of course, with my dad owning a business, obviously there's some privileges when your family owns a business. He really broke down a lot of barriers for me. So there's a lot of stuff that I probably didn't have to fight that some other kids would, because like I just told you, I never had to apply for a job. So
Mhm.
I was always going to have a job or always know how to do things. My dad's he's a hardcore guy, so he never gave us anything, but he always taught us how to do things. So the part going to school, I didn't necessarily think of it as go to school before you pursue fishing. I just felt like I didn't want to just go straight from high school into, just the mainstream world.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that, but I knew I didn't want to be separated from a
Because you
fishing
weren't
rod.
did you feel like you weren't ready for that? Because I know I did when I was getting ready for college, I was like, "Man, this is almost like a sanctuary because I am certainly not
Right.
ready for what's out there."
Right. Not necessarily because, man, I probably had about as much responsibility when I was 15, 16 years old as a lot of adults do when they're 20 in their late 20s.
Why is that?
Like I said, my dad's hardcore, so if you wanted something, you had to work for it. So
Uh-huh.
I had just as much, other than having to buy my own place to live. If you wanted to go fishing, you had to buy what you needed. If you wanted a truck, you had to buy it. If you wanted a boat, I had to buy it. If you wanted clothes, you have to buy it. Everything you had to buy, other than paying utilities and having a place to live, you had to get it. So
Mhm.
and that's I mean, I have friends that are in their 20s that don't have that much responsibility now.
Yeah, and so that opportunity to earn that money was always there through your dad's
Yes,
business? Right,
yes,
okay.
absolutely, absolutely. So that was in some regards, definitely. I think it put me ahead. working in a family business, especially a landscaping company, I always knew how to do stuff. And that was simply because I was always around my dad 24/7. So if he knew how to do something, I knew how to do it
Mm.
too. And it's helped me all the way until now. I just knew things, how to do stuff and how to accomplish stuff, how to fix things, only because our landscaping company and being around equipment and stuff, you just always knew how to dig your way out of a hole.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a tremendous advantage. Doesn't seem like it, and during the time, it seems like a tremendous disadvantage during the time. But 20 years later, you realize, like, man, I was really an advantage because I knew how to scrap and get my way out of a hole or fix things when it broke and things like that. So
And just the value of having
so
a
valuable,
work ethic
so
of hard
valuable.
work pays
Yeah,
off.
and that's a long-winded way of getting around what you were originally asking. Is I had more value working alongside our family company than I probably would have ever got going to college for
Hmm.
10 years. So, and I know that's a taboo subject, but college wasn't really that important for me. It wasn't an integral part of me, who I am now, or where I want to go. And I know that's taboo. It's not
Why do
something
you
you want
why
to
do you
be
say
put out there.
that's taboo?
I got more because the norm is, our society has really taught us that if you don't go to college, you're kind of like a loser now. I feel like that. I hear that from, and mom, I'm telling you this, and my wife's a teacher.
Hmm.
My wife's a teacher, and
How old, what kind of teacher, and
she's
how?
an eighth grade
Eighth
science
grade,
teacher,
okay.
a middle school science teacher, and we kind of teach kids, you got to go to school, got to go to school, got to school, and they don't even know what they want to do.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that for every person that's the perfect thing to do for them.
Yeah.
Because I learned way more working under my dad than anybody could ever teach me in school. But that doesn't mean that everybody needs to go that route, and
Right.
that's not what I'm saying. I just knew I was really self-aware of where I was at and where I was going, and knew that if I did that, I was gonna come out of school with debt and wasted 4 years of my life where
Yeah.
I could have been getting
See,
ahead.
I don't really think that that's a taboo subject. I think that if you're not thinking in those terms, like you just said,
Yeah,
especially about the student debt, I mean, so many kids are coming out of school crippled
it's
with debt
discouraging.
that they're not going to repay until they're
Right,
45 years old.
alright.
That is really not a
It's not
recipe for a
good.
happy
It's
life.
it's not good, and but we've pushed that on our teenagers so much. Make sure you go get your education first. It's like, no, let's figure out, what do you want to do first?
Right.
What are you trying to accomplish? What's the end goal? What's the end game? Can we figure that out first? And then let's look at schools and go there accordingly.
Hmm. How do you suggest that a young person figure out what it is that they want to do?
And this is such a generic answer, but you really got to be self aware. What are you good at? What makes you lose sleep at night? For me, and this was a wrestle I had with my dad later on in life, is I don't really care if I get rich or not. I don't, that'd be nice, but you got to have something that you like to do and you don't care if you make money or not. And chances are, if you like to do something, you'll be good at it and you'll make a living at it.
Hmm.
And fishing was always, that was just all the thing. That was the only thing I could ever see myself doing long term. Later on in life, I ended up having to branch off and run my own landscaping company because I knew I wanted to fish, and that requires so much time and effort. And the only reason I did that because I knew that was the only way I could get to where I wanted to do. Everybody thought I loved landscaping and fishing and horticulture and all that. Everybody thought it because grew up doing it, so that's all I knew. So I'd like to say I was fairly successful at it, but that was the only gateway that I could see
That's when
to
you
get to where
started
I
your
wanted.
own, like, to provide your gas money, and
Right,
not only that, but you're probably hiring a couple of people, so that's giving you
right,
time. You
right.
get the job started, then you can go fishing.
Wintertime, you don't have that much work. Our schedule is always from January to June.
Mhm.
So, I got 3 or 4 months where I can fish as much as I want. And then, it was always hard in the spring when things got busy, but you just muscle. That's just what you got to deal with. I just dealt with it.
So it's interesting. I just was talking to one of my friends, C.A. Richardson, who was on the podcast.
I'm a big fan of CA.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this moment, and he had kind of a similar thing where he's got one thing going on over here, he's got another thing going on. And I really tried to get him to talk about this one particular moment. I'm like, and I'm sure there's one for you. You've got the landscaping going. You've got whatever is going on in the fishing world going.
Right.
This one's not enough necessarily to support
Mhm.
everything that you want to be doing, and this one keeps taking time away from this
Mhm.
one that is providing
Right.
the resources. What does
Absolutely.
that moment look like to you where you just say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm doing this, because
Yeah.
that's a major
Oh,
life moment.
I got so many good stories on that, and I'm somewhat still in that boat. Somewhat, I'm still in that threshold, but there's one moment in particular. I don't know if I say it's a regret, but I've definitely learned for this one situation that I had. It would be about 4 or 5 years ago now. I just tell you a story. I graduated from school and I work from 2004. I mean, I fish, fish, fish. I work, fish, work, fish, work, fish. That's literally all my life is. I don't have any other side distractions or anything else. And I get to a point where finally things start to crack in fishing a little bit. I start to win, start to have some good years at a local level. I started fishing regional events. Things start to bust loose a little bit. And also in the process, I've got married at this point, and my first son is born, and so my landscaping company is really starting to. I'm doing good, and a lot of big contracts. So I've got fishing that's going good. All of a sudden, after you fought all of that, and then landscaping starting to go good as well. And I get to this crossroads where I'm about to qualify for the FLW tour. I'm sitting in like eighth in the point standings for that year. And also my job is doing really good. I got a huge contract. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I landed this huge landscaping contract that was going to set you free. Like I mentioned, I grew up middle class, not rich, but when you start a company, there's a little struggle there. It's like, oh, he's always watching the budget. What? I kind of got to where I was free, and I was like, if I want this, I can get it. If I want it, I can get it. I got kind of a little comfortable in there.
Mhm.
I had this opportunity through the Ever Starts. I fished 3 events, was eighth in the points. Could have easily fished the last event, qualified for the tour. Things. Fishing is a momentum sport. When you're doing good, you need to take advantage of it. Well, right in the middle of the season, I landed a huge landscaping contract with a school district here at where I live, and I had to make a decision. This wasn't a contract where I could go fishing and manage from while I'm on the lake and let guys take care. I needed to be there,
Mhm.
and I decided not to go to the final event that year
Mm.
and stay home and make money and be comfortable. The worst decision I've ever made in my entire life. Now, if Susie Orman was sitting right here, she would have said, "Young man, you did right," because you would have made guaranteed money. It just made sense to the mainstream world. I made the right decision, but I got so upset with myself because I know I'd worked so hard all these years, and I knew what my end goal was. And then you get that door, and you decide to be safe and work.
Mm.
And I learned that lesson, and ever since that day, I have cheated that landscaping company and went fishing every time. I choose fishing every time. Like I will never ever do that again. Work, 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 work for a dream, and then decide to be safe.
Complacency.
I decided to be safe because when you're doing something like that, you're gonna get paid. Now I could have went to that and maybe not did good, not did well, but that was that opportunity where you had the chance to really, knock it out of the
You're
park.
married at this time?
Yeah, we're married, doing fine.
No, but I mean when you were
Yep.
making this decision, you were
Yes.
married. And
Yes.
so did you had to go and talk that decision over with your wife?
Yeah, absolutely. The fortunate thing, which is a whole nother podcast, is the whole family thing and mixing that with fishing and traveling and so forth. Fortunately,
Oh, I don't know. We got a lot of time.
yes, yeah, exactly. Since that's all I ever did, none of this was a surprise to my wife or anything like that. So she kind of knew going into it, and I fished and I traveled a little bit even when we were dating. So a lot of people always ask me, well, how does she deal with that? How does she accept it? Well, it's to her, it's same thing as always been because
Uh-huh.
that's all I ever did. Travel, work, gather up my money, and then I'm going for a week or 2 weeks or however it is. So it was never new to her. So I talk all that over with her, and she's always just whatever you think is best. She's whatever you think is best. She's not going to really get in there and try to muddy the waters for me or
Yeah, but
anything.
at that point, that's like I either don't get paid a whole bunch of money or I go
Right.
and risk a whole bunch of money. That
Right.
seems like a conversation you're having around the
Oh
dinner
yeah,
table.
absolutely, absolutely. I probably to the point to where I probably wore out with it. I
Yeah.
bet because I mean we talk about it every day in our house. Even when we were dating, I was like, you know that we're going to be going a lot when we get married, right? So yeah, it's I brought all that conversation back, and I just made a decision to stay that year.
Uh-huh.
And I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Never do it again.
Are you when you're so sure that you're never going to do it again? Is that just because of the way that decision made you feel? Did you feel like you had just let yourself
Oh
down?
yeah, yeah.
Like you
Oh
chose
yeah,
safety over
yeah. I
what
chose
you
safety.
feel like you could have
I'm not a
done?
safe person at all. Not a safe person at all. It's so weird and it's hard to relate what I'm talking about to, growing up in a landscaping company in the business, nothing I've never had a guaranteed paycheck my entire life. Even owning the company, you don't know what you're gonna make.
Mhm.
Where I have friends that have jobs, they're like they're gonna make X amount of dollars every month. Well, growing up in a family owned business, you get paid if you work. You don't work, you don't get money. So
Plus, you got weather in that
you got
business, just like you
weather.
got weather in the fishing business.
Right, right, exactly. Which always worked to my advantage. Every day it rained, I didn't have to work. So where did I go? I was always on the water. Every single day it rains. That's why I always stayed with it, even though, I liked it. There's other things I probably would have wanted to do more, but I knew that was the best that allowed me the most time on the water.
Hmm.
Is because like you said, weather you couldn't work, it's too cold, don't work. You'd make up excuses. Oh, it's too windy, not going fishing. Like stuff like that. So it's the smaller part of a huge, huge picture, for sure. The route I took,
Huh.
no doubt.
So when you're considering fishing as a living profession, you're thinking you want to be an angler. There's a lot of different routes to take, but
Lots of
from
them.
what I can see and from what you're describing, you always thought the professional bass angler, competitive
Right.
tournament level angler was your path.
Yeah, yeah, no
Did you
doubt.
try any
Well,
other way in the fishing
no,
business?
but because at the time you gotta think this is early 2000s. As far as I knew, as far as my see, that was the only thing you could do.
Hmm.
There was nothing. I didn't have another avenue to fish and express that other than tournament fishing.
Hmm.
I didn't know of anything else at the
Yeah,
time.
there weren't really guides around or.
No, not a lot in my area. It's not something that I ever saw myself doing. I ended up doing that
Hmm.
here recently, and I never, I just never saw myself doing that. It was just always the tournament aspect of it. Is
Hmm.
what I had in mind.
And when you choose the FLW, I don't know much about the schedule or what lakes they go on, but is that kind of in the in your wheelhouse there, or are you traveling considerably when you choose to jump on that tour?
Well, yeah, you travel. So we have 7 events every year, and I typically don't pre-practice. So it's really not as much time away from home when the actual tournament aspect as a lot of people advertise. It's 7 times away from home,
Yeah.
7 weeks a year.
And then the rules in some of those tournaments don't allow for practice right up
Right,
to the
right.
day.
You
So
only get 3 days of practice,
okay.
so it's not like you're gonna go 2 weeks early so you can get some extra practice. The only thing you can do is go pre-practice. I think it's 30 days before each event. You can go and spend a couple days, and typically I don't do that simply because things change a lot in 30 days. So
Mhm.
if you go to a venue 30 days before, chances are when the tournament starts, it's nothing like that. So
Mm.
you can get a lot done in 3 days if you're prepared, got everything ready, kind of done some study at home. You can get a lot done in 3 days, and that's pretty much the way I've always done it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So the way that I found you was through Instagram, which I find a lot of my guests, and I like Instagram as a social media platform.
Right.
But there was a video that popped up in my Explorer or in my Explore tab, which was you fishing with a child that was ill, terminally ill,
Right.
and it really caught my eye what you were doing there.
Cool.
It,
Yeah. So that's a real long story. It kind of goes back to the whole front half of this conversation we started here. In that 15-year period of me trying to get to that professional status in fishing, there's a lot of stopping and starting. Is like this is never going to happen. that I didn't really mention there. About 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. So, and long story short, I came up with this concept of adversity is dope because I was like, man, like the people that are really struggling and then they overcome, like that's the coolest thing ever. Like that's so cool that you can be almost terminally ill and then impact like multitude of people.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing to me. And so I was like, you really need to start building relationships with people that have overcome obstacles. And so I was like, Fish, you've been doing this YouTube thing. And so why not try to fish with them and just have a good time on camera? So that's how I got to that slang terminology of adversity is dope. And Tron, the guy you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a kid that I met through fishing, I think through Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one of his pictures one day and I just reached out to him on Instagram, DM'd him, and we met up and fished. Really that simple.
Yeah.
Really that simple. I was so inspired by him. He'll never say, he'll never complain. To this day, I really don't know what exactly is wrong with him. I don't ask him. I just talk to him about fishing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. And in his mind, I can already tell he's not dwelling on that. All he's like, I just want to fish. And so that's just so awesome to me.
Yeah,
So
he could
awesome.
fish.
Yes, he's a fisherman.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's a real fisherman.
I watched that video a number of times because I was just trying to figure it out, and it was really well done. The way that there was just a story there, and it really, I don't know what it was, but I mean, I enjoy that too. And in this podcast, we have gone through the theme many times. You call it adversity is dope. I call it weakness is strength.
Right.
Like,
That's it.
like
Same
there is
thing.
in my own experience. I grew up in Tennessee. I had never
Right.
been to the Florida Keys. I had never seen
Right.
I had never been on a
Right.
fishing guided trip.
Landlocked Tennessee.
Yeah. I had never been on a guided fishing trip. I didn't even know that being a fishing guide was like a thing.
Right.
Right. And so when I was exposed to this idea and I went to the Florida Keys, I had never caught a bonefish before. I didn't
Right.
know anything about it. And so I started working really hard, and I wasn't a stranger to hard work. Just like you, my father
Right.
taught me the value of hard
Hardcore.
work. And,
Right.
and then I was a wrestler in high school, and that even kind of instilled even more in there.
Right.
So there was not a problem with hard work. And I started learning just a little bit.
Right.
And just kept my head down, and as soon as I'd learn something, I'd keep moving.
Right.
And I just felt like looking at these other guides, wow, like that he's third generation down here.
Right.
Everybody he knows is a fishing guide. I've never even met a fishing
Right.
guide before. He grew up doing
Right.
this, and I would just look at these guys and go, man, I got to get back to work. And I would just work and work and work and work and work and explore. And as soon as I found something, I'd go exploring some more. And as soon as I had happy customers, I would go exploring. And the next thing I know, it's 10 or 12 years later, and realizing that those people that had that fourth generation guide mentality, they were just doing this little milk route.
Right.
Because certainly they could catch fish at any time. But my weakness of not knowing anything and being
Right.
horribly unconfident and just realizing, man, I really have a lot of work to do, and never realizing where I was actually the biggest strength that I
Oh,
ever
no
had,
doubt.
because I just continued to work
Right.
until all of a sudden one day I'm like,
Yeah.
those guys don't know how to run in the
Yeah.
dark all the way to the Key Largo. Like,
That's life in general, what you just mentioned.
yeah, I mean, I really, really am fascinated with that, and as soon as I saw that video, I'm like, man, I got to talk to this guy, because the adversity is dope. I just loved that so much, and I just feel so strongly that the things that we encounter in our life that seem like the biggest disadvantages we
yeah.
have will ultimately turn out to
Oh,
our greatest
no doubt.
advantage.
No doubt. There's no doubt. I can relate to that so much and on so many different stories and levels and so forth. There's another piece to that's a huge part of who I am and why I'm so glad I've got pretty thick skin now. Is I didn't even mention the part of when you got kids. I've got a son now, so I totally can relate. Even though my dad was a tournament fisherman, I think there was definitely some caution there because he was familiar with how likely it is that you probably won't make it as a tournament fisherman because he was familiar with the scene and how it goes and how the failure rate's pretty high in
Mm-hmm.
professional bass fishing, and he knows about that. And so when I decided to start pursuing this as a something I want to do, he definitely wanted to like protect me from that. Like,
Yeah.
no, you need to work. No, 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 you don't need to do that. And the best way to the political correct way to say it is there was a lot of intense fellowship in my early 20s to the point where I had to start my own company if I wanted to do this.
Intense fellowship
Eh,
between you and your
oh
dad.
yeah, intense fellowship. In other words, a lot of fussing, fighting, bickering, and so forth because I wanted to fish and just being a loving dad that wants to see his son not fail. I think he wanted me to do that. And so I don't think back then you would have I could have never even said what I just said because what it looks like at face value is, man, that guy's discouraging his kid. How could he do that? But now in all reality, all it is, he loves you so much that he doesn't want to see you fail. In that process of that, man, it made me so thick. So because I hear a lot of my friends on tour or buddies in passing, I hear stuff that they're complaining about or they might have to overcome. I'm like, that's what you're complaining about? Like seriously? It's like seriously, you're gonna complain about that? Whereas I had to deal with so much bickering and overcome a lot of obstacles at home because I wanted to fish. And it's like I can plow right through that stuff. It's like I'm
Yeah.
not worried about that. You mean you tell me you're really mad because I don't know, just the smallest thing, your trolling motor broke today.
Right.
So now you want to sell everything and start something. It's like that's all you're mad about, really, really, or just small little things that you actually can control. I'm like, because of going through all of that at home and dealing with that, it's made me so much stronger. And
Yeah.
it's exactly what you were
It's
talking about.
interesting how a lot of the times when you have a dream or some kind of lofty goal, let's
Right.
say, that often I'm always very careful about who you surround yourself with, and
Absolutely.
there's the thought that you are the sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right?
Right.
Well, it's interesting how, and I become very sensitive to this as a parent now because I don't really want to do this to my child, right?
Right.
But when someone has lofty goals that seem like they are impossible
Right.
or they seem like you're just setting yourself up to get hurt, which is the case that
Right.
you're talking about with your dad.
Absolutely.
Your dad already had enough experience to know, man, the odds are you're
Yeah.
not going to make
He's
this.
gonna end up
So
broke. Yeah.
I'm going to try to do you a favor and protect you. But the interesting thing is that a lot of times when people are setting off on a course that in your head is possible and you are committed to the
Right.
work that it takes to get there, oftentimes the ones that love you the most are the ones that at some time you may need to distance yourself from.
Right.
And it's
Right.
not because you dislike that person or it's not because of anything else or they dislike you or they don't believe in you a lot of times. Well, maybe it could be,
Sometimes.
but it is that they are being protective. But at some point, you've got to get away from
Right.
that protectiveness,
Right.
right?
Right.
And and
Absolutely.
and that's what you're really struggling with because you love your dad,
Oh
you
yeah.
want his advice, but he's not giving you the advice that
Right.
at the
Exactly.
time.
It ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me though.
Really?
I promise you. It was if he had not been so hard on me, there's no way I'd be as tough as I am now.
Yeah.
No way. No way.
Now at the same time, are you having some of your friends that are like, "Pff, man, you'll never make it as a bass
Oh,
fisherman?"
I expect that from them.
Yeah.
I That doesn't bother me. No. I mean, just to be real candid, I'm a black kid from South Carolina that loves professional bass fishing. So I can deal with people saying that you can't make it.
Uh-huh.
I'm cool with that. I expect that. That's okay. When it comes like with inside your home, that's hard to deal with.
Yeah.
That's a little tougher. But I really don't ever care, put any value it's weird. So I put a lot of value on what people think of me, and then at the same time, I don't. I
Yeah.
really filter that in a weird way, but I don't really care what people think I can and can't do. That's their business. It's none of mine because all I can control is what I can do.
Mm.
And so I don't really put any face value at that at all. And I still have people doing that.
Yeah.
And they bring that up to me all the time. I still have them doing that. But
What doing what?
oh, so you might have a bad tournament or a bad season, and it's always a little shady comment here or there. But what they don't realize is the story's not over.
Yeah.
Like it's not like this year or whenever that thing happens is it's not over. That was just 1 year. That was 5 seconds in the hour-long movie.
Yeah.
It's the movie's not over yet. So there's not a good movie if there's not some drama in it. You know what I mean? So
There's always going to be drama.
Yeah.
If you've got a big goal or something that is off the beaten path,
yeah,
there's going to be plenty of drama. I just find that it's interesting with friends, like you're saying, you expect that from some
I don't
people,
mind that.
and other people are not going to bother you. I mean, there's always those people that want to knock you
Absolutely.
down,
Absolutely.
right? Especially when they start to see you have some success. But family members can often be a real difficult one to
Absolutely.
deal with, because they're just trying to protect you,
Right,
and you
it's
just
usually
and-
love, actually.
yeah,
It's
yeah, that's
actually
exactly
usually
what it
love.
is.
It
It's love, and and a lot of times it comes from a good place.
Absolutely.
But the point is that is not being helpful towards the goal.
Right.
So, at what point did you and your dad kind of come to terms on, okay, I see this is what you're doing,
right.
and if you're going to do it, then I mean, is he supportive now?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, after you it's all in love, and after you get to a certain point, like, I'm 35 now, I think he knows it, like, "Alright, he's gone now, there's nothing I can do." But in the 20s, that the end of your 20s is it's like your teens and 20s. It's always the juncture where you gotta pick a road,
Yeah.
And I think he knows how critical that was, and he was just trying to help me just not go down the path of destruction where you're broken family and all that. That's all he was trying to do.
Yeah.
And whether or not he was doing it the right way, it doesn't matter. The fact all that matters is that he cared enough to try to do it, try to steer me in the right direction. But it's just so much can be lost in those early years like that. And I'm just thankful that that he saw that in the end game, that it ended up being, the best thing. Best case scenario is what happened. Even though it was the worst case scenario at the time, it ended up being the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt, because I had to. Not only did I have to overcome, you know, friends, but you have to overcome that, and you got to figure out how to overcome, just the industry in general. Not necessarily as this obstacle, but you have to wiggle your way. It's always a headwind. So
Mm-hmm.
all dealing with all of that for 15 years, it makes you pretty doggone hard-headed and strong.
Yeah.
I think, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are you seeing that there's a turn in the tide? The tide's turned a little bit in your favor?
Yeah, I think so.
What kind of success have you had on the tour?
So this year here was my third year fishing the FLW tour as a true touring professional. I went from the club level to grassroots, which in the FLW tour would be like the BFLs, to the Everstars, which is AAA, which is sort of like minor league baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I fished there quite a while, and then finally moved to the tour 3 years ago.
And so, to get
Yeah.
to the tour, there's a qualifying
Absolutely.
steps that you have to take, and you have to win, or you have to place, or you have to earn so many points, or
Right.
how does it work?
In that AAA division, you have to finish in the top 10, the Everstars. Back when I was fishing them,
That's
now it's the
total
Coastal-
points accumulated?
the top 10 over 4 events over the
Okay.
season. And that was the year that like I mentioned previously, I was well inside that top 10 cut, and I decided not to go to the last
Oh.
one. Yeah, so that makes sense. So fortunately for me, we obviously had a dip in the economy a few years back, and not a lot of guys could afford to fish and get in the FLW tour. So there was always a couple spots in there that were open to to the general public after they went through all the numbers. Some guys would qualify and deny the qualification, and just decide to
Mm-hmm.
keep fishing AAA. So I've registered one year. I think it was 2015. I registered, couldn't get in. 16, I finally punched in and got in, mainly because there was just not enough, not enough pros
Yeah.
to fill all the suggested slots. So 16 was actually a pretty year. My rookie season was actually my best season so far. It was a good year. I think it was some of like what you said. It was my first year on tour. I knew it was going to be a huge battle. I went to a lot of places I'd never been to
Yeah.
before. And so I worked extremely hard in the off season to, just to learn what the lakes were, what the typical weights were, and just missed the cut by like 30 points that year, which sounds like a lot, but in the 30 points is the difference between finishing, instead of finishing 80th, you finish 50th,
Mm-hmm.
or in that spread over 7 tournaments. So it's just a point here, point there. Did really good that year. I was really proud of that. And then it came in the second year. I actually started doing a little better, but I had a couple bombs, a couple of those 120s, 130s,
Yeah.
and that kind of just shot my points down a little further. And then this year, I don't know what happened this year. It was just one of those things where things went fast, and a lot of if it could go wrong, it kind of pretty much went wrong no matter how much I fought it.
Yeah.
And ended up being my third season was my worst out of the 3 so far. But I always tell my wife, I'm like, when you're having, it's all about momentum in this deal. When you're having bad tournaments, it's a little bit like diarrhea. You just need to get it out. So like all I want to do is fish another tournament so I can get whatever the bad stuff is, get that out of my system so I can hurry up and get to the good. So, 3 years into it, cashed a couple checks here and there. Made my first cut this year, my first top 30 cut this year. So that was real cool. The previous 2 years, I missed the cut by ounces 2 times each year.
Mm.
So that was always a blow when you think you're gonna be in that cut and you miss it by just an ounce, 2 ounces, 3 ounces. I had that happen 2 times in the previous 2 years. So it's definitely you're getting better, but just gotta avoid those bombs every now and then. You gotta learn how to ride the bike and balance it, not crash and burn a little
Yeah.
bit. So
What happens when you have the bombs? How do you I mean, man, there's a we did the redfish tournaments and that was a two-man team, and you're riding back with your partner. There's somebody to talk to, but on some of these bass
right,
deals, man, you go someplace a long way from home, you
right.
bomb, you're riding back
Long
8
drive.
hours by yourself.
Yeah. Happens.
There's a lot of stuff that goes
Yeah.
on in the head. How do you recover from something like that?
Well, one thing is fishing is different from many other sports. So if you think fishing is something that you want to do, you better realize that's going to happen. I mean, that's just a part of it. It's like thinking you're going to be a professional fisherman and never bomb is almost like thinking you could buy a piece of furniture and never have to dust it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those things where it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But how do you deal with that? Some of it is just realizing that what I just said is really true. That's not just a cute saying that you just say because I'm dealing with it. You just you're gonna have bad tournaments. But I study those tournaments. A lot of people say, well, you always forget that stuff. I don't get hung up on it emotionally, but when I have a bad tournament, I really try to look at it like a movie and see like what happened? What did I do? Should I went left when I should have went right? Should I've practiced, spend a little bit more time practicing in this area opposed to that area? Like I study those tournaments. I want to know what I did wrong. Just like I do I if you don't know what you did wrong, when you look at the tournaments when you did right, it's no way you can compare them. So I study those tournaments where I do bad just as good as I do the ones where I finish very well.
Yeah, tournaments are interesting like that because, well, in the ones that you're doing, there's television coverage. So,
Right,
say you bomb, you can go back and you can watch that tournament and you
right.
can see the
Every
guys
time.
that did not bomb, what exactly they were doing, and you can be like, man,
Right,
I that was my second choice,
right.
and I chose
So
this
many
one.
times.
Yeah, of course,
So
but
many.
that's a lot different than just the regular angler that goes out and has a bad day, and somebody that's trying to get better, but they don't have the benefit of seeing what the
Right,
top guy did. There might be a little doc
right,
talk. Oh, we caught 20. You don't ever know if that guy's
right,
saying the right thing or not, or if he's
right,
just blowing smoke.
right.
But that's where I think as far as there's all different levels of tournaments from just the little club levels to the
Absolutely.
to the to the real deal. But in each one of those, there is proof that someone did
Absolutely.
something, and then you're kind of like, okay,
All right.
it was
It
possible.
is possible. There is always a way. That's one thing about that tournament fishing will tell you. There is always a way to catch them. There's always, I don't care how tough, and there could be 7 hurricanes go over a lake, a tornado, and a snowstorm, and a heat wave in the same week, and there's still gonna be a way to catch them. And
Somebody's going to be on it.
somebody's gonna figure something out, and realizing that makes you wanna work a little bit harder. Somebody always wins. It doesn't matter with 180 boats, somebody's gonna win $100,000 7 times next year.
Hmm.
So, you better get out there and figure out what's going on, but, how to deal with that, if you're gonna be a fisherman, dealing with all of that, you better I think you need to take some joy and pride in that because that's what fishing is. All fishing is looking at the conditions, looking at what's going on around you, and figuring out how the fish react to that.
Mm.
Like in a nutshell, that's fishing. A lot of people think fishing is pulling up, throwing a line out, catching, reeling it in. Well, that's just the result. For me, it's falling in love with the process of figuring out what's going on. The weather is sunny today. It's cloudy today. It rained. There's too many boats there. The grass is thick. There's no grass. The water's cold. The water's hot. Whatever. It's spotted bass. No, this one's largemouth. All of that. Like to me, that's what it is. Like it's funny we mentioned that and getting to the bad parts where you don't catch them. With the social media age, it has its good parts about it. And it has some bad parts. One of the I don't know if I should say bad parts, but one of the parts is you get a lot of people reaching out and they'll say, "Well, I'm going to Lake Hartwell. Got any tips?" It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know yet. I go out there and try things and find out what works. And sometimes I think people want that instant gratification. All I want to do is go to the lake and catch some fish. I don't want to have to deal with that. But for me, the whole point of me getting up in the morning and going is I wonder if there's any in that creek, or I wonder if the water stained up because it rained last night,
Hmm.
or man, I wonder if they're on brush piles yet.
So is that really what captivates you to a driven obsession?
No
Is
doubt.
finding them?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Just the whole process of it, like the whole getting to I flipped in the bush and he bit it.
Hmm.
Everything that comes before that is what I'm obsessed with. Like that, it's like just the actual flipping in the bush and getting, that's a whole lifetime of preparation to the when you actually put the hook in front of one and he bites it.
Hmm.
Everything in front of that is what is so cool about it to me. But for everybody, it's not that. It may not be that. And I understand, especially for a weekend fisherman, fishing can mean anything for you. Like I like that whole part of it. Another guy likes because he gets to hang out with Tom and his buddies and everybody else. It's got so many different, facets to it. But for me, it's that whole finding it out, figuring out what happens before you actually catch a fish.
Mm.
It's for
Interesting.
me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like the process too, and certainly as far as I always thought that there's fishing and then there's guiding. I mean, I made my
Right.
living as a fishing guide, and so as a fishing guide, I'm poring over the charts and looking at these spots, and this little spot
Hmm.
works
Right. The
every time the
process.
tide's right.
Right.
And what is it about this little spot that is different than all the rest of these on this
Right.
chart? And then you start to kind of figure out the way the water's flowing, or the color of the bottom, or something that's going on. Maybe it's the shape of the flat or
Right.
something. And then you start looking at these other places and going, okay, well, if
Oh,
that works,
right.
then maybe this will work.
Right.
And when you go there and there are actually fish there,
Oh, is that not the best
that
feeling?
that is definitely
That
the best
that is
feeling. Now
the
that's the
best
best
feeling.
feeling as a fishing guide. Then I have this whole different thing of being an angler and watching the fish eat, like when I'm
Right.
actually fishing.
Right.
Like I enjoy watching my customers catch a fish or something like that because they don't a lot of them aren't into the subtleties of how that fish is biting or
Right.
or what, but they just want to catch one,
Right.
right? They're
Just
at
wanna
that
reel 'em in.
place in their angling career.
And what's the next one?
Then
Yeah.
yeah, and then as you kinda transcend that and move up, I've gotten to where I just wanna see that fish eat and we have the good fortune of fishing in perfectly clear water,
Right.
which I know some of these
It's all
tournaments that,
visual for you.
some of
Yeah.
these tournaments that you're fishing in are also held in perfectly clear water. But I just want to see that fish eat in a way that is very natural,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like I got out of him
Right.
the natural aggression that is within that fish.
Right.
And somehow, if he bites it in a different way, like just kind of slowly picks it up, like, I don't really
Right.
know what this thing is, but I'm going to eat it
Yeah.
anyway. And I catch that fish, even if it's a big fish, it's not as satisfying as a
Right.
small fish that saw this and thought it was
Right.
real
Right. Right.
and came over there and ate it,
Yeah.
you know? So I don't know. We were talking about that the other day about just the subtleties of that. When you're fishing in super clear water to where you can see the bass, is that something that you like to do
Oh
or
yeah.
don't like to do?
Oh my gosh. Is it? That is my oh my God. And I've dabbled in saltwater a little bit. Of course, being affiliated with Z-Man and everything, they're saltwater guys.
Yeah.
So what I know about saltwater fishing, I've learned from those guys. And it's like, we have a small window in the freshwater world where we can actually visually see the fish come and get
Mhm.
the bait and see how they're reacting. But with saltwater, it's like that's pretty much all you do almost.
In certain
Uh,
locations, it definitely
yeah,
is.
that's all you do. So yeah, that is no doubt the most fun way to catch them. And then of course, with technology now, it's still a visual stimulation when you're using your electronics. Because a lot of the fishing we're doing now is in 30, 35 foot, 40, 55 foot where I live, 60 foot. And you still get exactly what you talked about, but I'm watching it on the screen. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a fish go down at my bait. Sometimes, especially the colors, you see how fish react to colors. You drop it past one, and then he really bolts down towards it, and you may drop a different size, different profile, a different size weight, and then he follows it down, but then he comes back up.
Yeah.
It's like he gets a good look at it. So yeah, that visual stimulation from it is, I mean, it's like nothing better than that. Just seeing a fish actually react to how you cast the bait, or if you made that right cast out in front of it. Oh, it's a little bit too far, a little bit too close, or there's just such a fine line in there, and figuring all that stuff out
Yeah.
that's fishing.
Yeah.
That is fishing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
that is fishing.
that is fishing, and that's what you're doing that's what really gets you excited, it's
No
getting me
doubt.
excited, but unfortunately not everyone that is fishing is experiencing fishing in that
Not like
capacity.
right.
It's like they may just have a cricket under a bobber, and that's cool
That's
too.
cool too.
It's
That
all
is cool.
cool.
That's 100% cool. I mean, that's visual stimulation
Yeah.
too. When you see that bobber lay over like that,
Yeah.
that's pretty doggone cool
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely it
That's I think that's definitely legit. I mean,
So you're probably doing a lot of that because you're married and you have what's your family situation?
I have a 5-year-old boy, and I've got one on the way, and I'll find out
Oh,
what
really?
it is on Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so awesome. So your 5-year-old little boy, he's fishing with you a lot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can go to my YouTube channel and you can see a lot of the videos I do with him. Quite a bit of material with him. He's
Uh-huh.
fun to fish with. And one thing that we're blessed with in upstate South Carolina, we have a lot of spotted bass, and they can be, not always, can be fairly easy to catch. They're great species to get kids around.
Uh-huh.
And so he's a bass fisherman. Usually you introduce kids to brim fishing or panfish because they're usually pretty easy to catch. But no, he's bass fishing with me,
Yeah.
right alongside me. No
That's
doubt.
cool, man.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
That's
lot
really
of fun.
cool. And does your wife like to fish?
She does. She will, especially when I bring him along with me. Does she's not going to get into the specifics, and she's not going to get all excited over how one bites a bait or anything, but she definitely goes with me. She's all about just as passionate as I am about fishing. She's just as passionate about education. So that's her thing. Of course, we do family outings and everything, but no, she's not it's not in her, but she married into it, not
Yeah.
necessarily in her blood at all.
Yeah.
Not at
Yeah,
all.
my wife married into it too.
Yeah,
I mean, and we did a lot of fishing when we were courting.
right,
And
exactly.
then after that, she's kind of like,
Isn't that funny how that works? It's same. I got the same story. I used to pick her up from work. She worked at a grocery store, and I used to pick. It was the grocery store is right at the lake, so it was always an excuse for me to like court date slash
Uh-huh.
fish all in one, and yeah, it just goes away slowly as you
Yeah.
get married. It's
Yeah,
funny how that
but there's
works.
other interests. I mean,
Yeah,
she's taking care of the kids and
no
and
doubt.
everybody's I don't know. I kinda like it that in a lot of capacity, we have different interests as well as
I need that.
similar interests.
I need that because I'm a very compulsive person. So when I do something, I do it a lot, and I'm like laser focused. And so having that balance, it helps me learn how to have fun without a fishing rod. And I do need to maintain some
Yeah.
normalcy. I mean, I honestly, I don't. You maybe you can, maybe you can, or maybe you can't relate to it. I have a hard time having fun without fishing, and that's not good. It's
No,
not
no,
good.
no, I can totally relate to it, and there was a period of my life where I always kinda do my hands like this, like it's the scale and balance,
Right?
and it
Oh
was like
yeah,
this. It was all
yeah.
fishing, and, I was guiding over 300 days a year, and when I wasn't guiding, I was looking at charts, and when
Right.
or sleep, and it just the balance was tipped
No doubt.
towards fishing completely, and, over the years, I've understood the value of taking a couple days off.
No
I've
doubt.
understood the value of spending time with the family. I've understood the value of having other interests
Right.
besides fishing. I've understood that if all you are doing is one thing, even for your body and your physical activity, that is the recipe for getting hurt,
Right.
and
No
for
dought.
fishermen, you're like, well, how are you gonna get hurt
Oh,
fishing?
no, it's
Well, a lot of
intense.
fishermen have really bad back problems
Right,
because they're not paying any attention to their core and they're not doing any other
right.
things other than casting, and you get bad tendonitis in your arms,
Yeah.
and then you get issues in your back. Actually, when I look at bass fishermen, I'm thinking that is the recipe for a blown disc right there. You're going 80 miles an hour sitting down
Sitting down.
like this in a hunched over position, and then when you're done doing that, you're gonna get in the car and you're gonna ride
Right.
4 hours, right?
Yeah,
And then you're gonna sleep in a crappy hotel
yeah.
bed or on the ground.
It's intense.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
very
that
intense.
is a real recipe for a bad back, but I've found that balance throughout, just balance about thinking about other things, balance when
Right.
doing other things, balance in physical fitness, balance in your diet, balance in all aspects of my life has improved my life drastically, and, but there has to be that time
Right,
where, like, if you wanna be really good at something, you have to have that time in your life where it's wacky out of balance,
right.
and that's the real secret to success, I think,
I
is
I
can you
I believe
manage
that.
that period of time, and can you hold your family together? Can you hold your business together? Can you hold your friends together? Can you hold all this together while you're basically acting like a crazy person
Right.
for 5 or 6
Absolutely.
years
Absolutely.
until you can actually have enough success to take a breath and
Right.
realize, okay,
Yeah.
I don't have to go that hard anymore. I can back off slightly,
Right.
and then I can start to do a couple of other things. But I mean, truly, I think that if you want to be good at anything,
You
there has
have
to
to
be
go
that
hard.
time.
You have to go hard. You have to go all in. I had to do it even that's one of the things that's so good about growing up in middle class family is like you have to go in so hard because it costs a lot just to get in the game.
Yeah.
So you have to go in so hard. So when you get in the game, then you're used to going in hard. So it's not that big of a transition. For me, like you said, I definitely think that, especially fishing the tour, you got to think I'm 3 years into it, and there's literally guys that's been fishing for longer than I've been living.
Yeah,
Think about that.
no, you're absolutely right. There's some
Longer
absolutely
than I've been living.
legends.
They've been fishing professionally, and then here
Mhm.
you come 3 years into it. So yeah, you gotta kind of be very intense and absorbing knowledge. So it's hard for me when we go to family functions, and there's nobody there that knows anything about a drop shot, or that's it's hard. It's they're talking about college basketball and football and or whatever the latest thing that's going on, and I have no idea what they're talking about
Yeah.
because I've either been buried in the internet trying to learn, absorb something for the next event, or I've been gone for 2 weeks. I RV, so most of the time I stay by myself. I don't have a TV in my RV, and that's on design too.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know what's the latest thing that's happened or that, whatever's going on in the country. All I know is that entry fees due and I need more money. So
Uh-huh.
that's all I know. That's
So it's interesting that you bring that up because my next question to you was, a lot of ways to supercharge your knowledge is to pool your knowledge with somebody else. But
right.
do you
I
have some
still do that.
traveling
Oh
partners
yeah.
that
Yeah.
and kind of work together with certain people?
Absolutely. I have a very, very small circle of buddies that we kind of trade information on. You got to have it. There's no doubt.
Mhm.
For years, I didn't have it. When I fished locally, I didn't really have a whole lot of people that I shared information with and kind of shot ideas back and forth. But when you get to the tour level, it's definitely smart to do that. But I do RV. There's so many advantages to doing that. Mainly, one is it's the safety factor. I don't ever have to go to the hotel because a lot of the places we're going, there's not the Hilton there.
Right.
It's far back out. I'm almost always at a campground that's at the lake. My boat is always right beside my camper.
Yeah.
I always have a place to hook up my batteries at night. It's always my bed, so it's my dirt, my sheets, my pillow. It's my toilet. I
Your
crap on my own toilet and take a
but
shower in my own
then you
shower.
also got your own food, right? I
My
mean,
own
because
food.
that's a major issue
Yeah,
when you're traveling a
I
lot.
can cook. I can prepare at home. I can get all my grocery shopping done at home. So when I roll into town, all really I got to do is just go fishing. I don't have to
Mhm.
get there and then go to the
So
grocery
what does this
store.
rig look like? Is it like a C class where that you drive the
No,
RV?
I have a truck camper. So
Okay.
I have the ones
In
where,
the back of your
yep, goes in the
Oh,
back of my
that's my
truck.
dream rig,
Oh, it's
man.
so awesome. And I have an old one. I bought an old one. It's a 96 one, but and I've ever since I started fishing the tour, all 3 years I've RV'd and I'm to the point where I want another a bigger one. I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to have a bigger
Well,
one now.
okay, so a bigger one, but will you choose that same style?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
like I'm
Mhm.
really interested in this because I as a guide out west, I saw a couple people roll through town. I used to
It's
guide
bigger out
Wyoming,
west.
Idaho. I used to guide in Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, and it was trout fishing.
Right.
But we would do it out of drift boats, right?
Right.
So you're always having to trailer a boat.
Mhm.
But I would see a couple of these rigs roll in, and they were like the ones that go in the back of the pickup truck.
Right.
I don't know what
Right.
you
That's
call
what I
that.
have, truck camper.
So a truck camper, and the bed goes over
Right.
the cap
Right.
the cab of
Absolutely.
the truck, and the dream rig was a couple of these guys had a motorcycle on the front because we're fishing rivers
Ah,
and drifting down the river. So you would go and drop the motorcycle off where you're
down
going to
there
end,
and drift to it.
and then hide it in the bushes or whatever, and then you'd come back up, put your boat in. Go down there, take the motorcycle
Right.
up here, and you
Gosh,
can go
that's
back and get the
smart.
truck.
Smart.
And so I always thought, man, you wouldn't have to worry about a shuttle. I mean, there were
Right.
services that would shuttle the truck for you, but I always thought, man, that is the ultimate rig because you've got the camper, but you can also tow a boat.
Right.
Because
Right.
when you get to those bigger RVs, like
You
I guess
s
you can tow a boat,
you
but then you
can.
kind of need a vehicle too,
Yeah.
to
Some guys that, like the wife drives the boat and truck and they have a fifth wheel and another vehicle to pull a
oh,
fifth wheel.
see, I think that's too much.
It's a lot.
I
It's a
think
lot.
that's just
It's a
too
lot.
much.
It's a lot. You have 2 vehicles, expensive 2 vehicles, and then I wouldn't wanna put the for me right now, I don't wanna put, that much stress on my wife too, 'cause
Yeah.
I mean, driving 18, 15, 20 hours, that's
Does she go with you?
she goes with me in the summertime. She's here, with me now, when school's out, they come with me,
Uh huh.
and there's no doubt, they always come with me. If I do good, she'll probably take a sick day and come up and fly up and for the final day weigh-in or whatever, but, they always go with me in the summertime,
Uh
no
huh.
doubt. So, with 2, that's what I was saying, I'm gonna have to get a bigger truck camper because 'cause they're still, there's smaller ones and bigger ones,
Well,
some with slide outs
some
and
of those slants ones, I went and
yeah,
looked at those, and there was one that you really needed an F250 or 350 long bed,
need the 350
or that
dually.
yeah, the
Yeah,
dually with the long, an
right.
8-foot bed, and you can get a camper that is damn near equivalent
Yeah,
to an RV that you're pulling behind
absolutely,
your boat. It's got
absolutely.
pop outs on both sides.
And the back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
incredible. I
yeah,
mean, those things really are, but, I'm looking at that and I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna use it a few times a year." What I really wanna do is have that, but now I gotta step up to the much
right.
bigger truck.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
I would do that maybe if I was living in the thing,
Right.
or if it was something like you, that this is an integral part of what you're doing. But I think that's an amazing rig, man. That's really
It's the
cool.
way to go. I would never, unless I get to the point where I can't do it, because it's not cheaper. It's definitely not cheaper. You could argue it back and forth, but you always got the cost of the RV. But the only thing about it, at the end of it, something ever happens, you always can sell the RV and they hold the value very well, especially if you
Mhm.
get like a Lance. And I'm not even endorsed by Lance, and I'm telling you
Mhm.
that Lance, yeah, they hold the value very well. But it's just the safety factor, the peace of mind. It's just, to me, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes
You know what I
sense.
got recently? I got one of those CVT rooftop tents.
Yeah, I know what
Have
you're
you
talking about.
seen
They
those
go up on
things?
top of the trucks
Yeah,
and the
it's
SUVs,
on top of my truck, and I've got a cap on my truck,
right?
then a rack on top of that, and this thing sits up there. It's about this deep.
Right.
And my son and I went and did a big trip out to Zion National Park and all over Arizona, Utah, New Mexico,
Oh,
that whole area. And so I was kind of thinking, well, do we tow an RV?
right.
Do we rent an
That's
RV?
pretty neat.
Whatever. And so I came up with this rig. I'm like, okay, well, we can get this tent and it gets you up off the ground. And really, you unzip the thing and you go like this, and the tent pops up. They had one.
Wow.
Yakima had
Wow.
had one at the show,
Right.
right? It was their brand, but it
Right.
was very similar to what I'm
To
talking
work,
about.
yeah.
And it's just this vehicle tent that just pops right up. And I was like, I don't know if you'd want to live in it,
Right.
but if you're going for just 2 nights,
You could do that.
perfect.
Right.
And it
Right.
streamlines your whole
Yeah, no
rig
doubt. It's a
big time.
lot less because there's a little bit of utilities you have to carry with the truck camper. There's
Yeah.
you got your little sewer lines and everything. Because I've got everything in my truck camper that I've got in my house: the shower, the stove, even the oven, refrigerator. It's
Yeah.
got everything you got
That's
in
the
your
rig.
house. Just
So do you find that
compact.
that most of these places have RV places like KOAs or
Oh
whatever
yeah.
that have full hookups
Yep, yep.
nearby?
Some of them don't have, so typically if you go to, a government regulated campground, they usually there's no it's only a dump station,
Uh-huh.
no sewer hookups, but just about every privately owned one's gonna have full hookups.
Yeah, and that's gonna be close to the lake or not?
Almost always on the lake.
On the lake. So
Yeah,
you could just pull your boat up right there?
brushing my teeth while I'm launching my boat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to trailer your boat to the boat ramp every morning, undo all the
Most
sewer
of the
lines and
time,
all that stuff.
well, no, no. Leave the camper down, set the camper down. Yeah, you
Oh,
take it off your
you
truck.
leave the
Yeah,
camper.
it's full. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So you get there, you unhook your boat, and you get the camper off your truck. It's hydraulics. It lets up. You lets up. You pull the truck out from under it
I
and
gotcha.
let it all the way back down to the ground.
Yeah, and so then you got your truck and boat, you can go.
Yeah, people don't even know
Oh,
what I'm doing. Yeah,
that's the
you got
rig
it.
for
Yes,
sure.
you have to do it. Have to do it.
Yeah.
More guys are starting to catch on to it. Even 3 years ago, it was about maybe no 7 or 8 of us, and then people always laugh. There's no way I could stay in that tight thing, and then they kind of start realizing, we'll go to some towns that are kind of rough or something like that. Campgrounds are almost always really safe. And then the second year I noticed there's quite a few more, and then this year I mean, it's
Dude,
probably
you better hop on
20 guys.
that sponsorship deal
I
because
need to.
next thing you
I've
know,
tried, but it's tough. I don't think they even have. I don't think they realize how many of us travel yet.
yeah.
So I don't think they see the value quite yet.
Well,
But
that's your job to
yeah, that's the
to
job.
to educate them on that and how many you
Absolutely,
could sell because if that becomes the rig for everyone,
it's quickly doing it.
then there'll be what? There's hundreds
Yeah.
of bass anglers, right?
Right. And there's so at the tour level, there's probably just shy of 300 guys, and then but that's not the only guys that travel throughout the year. You
Yeah.
have the AAA. I did the same thing in the AAA. So there's thousands of guys traveling all year long.
So let me ask you this: if you went to a place that didn't really have the hookups and stuff like that, how are you charging your batteries at night?
You have a generator on your camper as well,
Mm.
so you're
Okay.
fully dependent. You can have a generator.
Yeah.
So I could technically I'll go to Champlain next week or 2 weeks from now in upstate New York, and I'll stop halfway. You can do everything you do in your camper when it's down on the ground. You can do it on your truck too with the
Mhm.
generator. So you can still plug up your batteries, but they're almost always going to have electrical and water. Just some campsites don't have sewer,
Right.
and which is terribly inconvenient when they don't. But
Yeah.
most of them
So
do.
you're usually there on site for 4 days?
It's actually a week because you have 3 days of practice. we'll have an off day just to kind of get everything together, and then have our meeting, pre-tournament meeting, and then the tournament's 4 days, 2 days full competition, top 30 on day 3 and top 10 on day 1. So it's
Okay.
always a week.
And so then you're telling me that in the tour that you're fishing, there's 7 opportunities.
7 events.
So are those going to be back to back to back to back to back, or is there going to be time in between that you go home?
Usually time in between I go home, almost always.
Like
There's
weeks or days or what?
most of the time is 1 per month, but there's occasionally we'll have a week on, a week off, and then another event. But it just depends on how schedule
but if
lays
you
out.
were in some place like upstate New York, is there a reason to go? I mean, of course, the reason is to be with your family, of course,
Right.
but that's 1,000 miles.
Right.
Like, do you ever just stay, or do you fly home, or what do you do?
No, I've the only time I've had to kind of rush is just recently. This last tour event this past year, my brother got married on the day of an event, so I drove up early, dropped my boat off, flew back home, and then flew back up there after the wedding was over. But I almost always go back home in between events. I fished 2 different trails, and twice this year I went 2 weeks on end. But I won't do that probably anymore. I think I'm just going to concentrate all my efforts towards the FLW tour from now on out, and not fish any more AAA events. So, because that was a lot, doing 2 weeks in a row, that was a lot. That was a lot. You just want to
that's
go
really
home.
tough, and all of a sudden it's putting tremendous pressure on the family that may or may not be necessary.
Yeah, it was just luckily my wife's really, really strong, and she can do everything that I can do when I'm probably in the way when I'm at home, honestly. So luckily I don't have that, but it's just like I want to be home, and
Yeah.
and
Of course.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
just want to be home.
You want to be home,
it's-
especially if, I mean, it'd be one thing if like you could go over there and practice on the area where the tournament's going to
Right.
be,
You
but that's
can't do
against the
that.
rules. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
what do? You just go fishing for fun, or
Right.
you try trout fishing or someplace?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, what do you like? It's almost like it's just not
No.
valuable
I
time.
always go back home. Like we've had a couple this past year that were week on, week off, week on. I go back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go back home. 3 or 4 days, that's a lot at home. I can get a lot done
Sure.
when I go back
Sure.
home. So.
Now you're fishing the FLW tournament. Is there a reason why you don't also fish the BASS?
So so you have 2 tours. Most of the time the schedules are going to overlap anyway. So you couldn't fish both at the same time. But FLW,
Oh, really? You couldn't do that?
No, not both. You could fit, like I fished the Bass Opens, which is the AAA division. So I fished the AAA and the tour, but you couldn't fish the FLW
And
tour.
do you think that the FLW and the BASS are putting those at the same time on purpose?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think both wants to keep each other's talent. Like this is my talent, my anglers. I want to keep them.
Now, has that always been the way? Because it seems like there were some anglers that were doing both.
For a few years, there were a couple guys that fished both tours simultaneously.
Yeah, and I think the one person I'm thinking about, he had a rig in this area of the country. He had a rig over here.
Sure
two
did.
two boats, 2 trucks,
Yeah.
2 sets of rods, 2 sets of baits, 2 sets
Right.
of everything.
Yeah.
Fly back and forth and
Right.
have people drive.
Exactly. That's happened there was a couple years where you were able to fish 2 tours. But that hasn't happened in quite a while.
That doesn't seem like there would be enough money to make that whole operation work.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, you'd probably be surprised.
Well,
You'd be
I
surprised.
might, but
yeah.
it just seems like
Well,
you got 2 people driving the truck, you got 2 trucks, you got 2 boats, you got 2 entry fees.
well, here's the thing though.
Can you do that without winning?
Here's the thing that a lot of people don't know about. I don't think a lot of mainstream crowd doesn't realize about fishing is, especially when you're talking about fishing 2 trails for a company that's sponsoring you, that's double exposure.
Right.
So
Yeah.
not only is he getting the press on FLW, then he gets the press over here at Bass. So double exposure. So I mean, it seems like double, but in all actuality, if a company's on that particular angler, I mean, it's way more than double value. It's
Mhm.
way more than double value there. Because now you even remember that guy. So now people even know him as a guy. Man, he fished 2 trails
Yeah.
for 2 years. And our winnings on tour, and this is not for everybody, but it's the way it's designed to be anyway, whether it was intentionally or not intentionally. like your winnings are actually should be your bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you're working throughout the year when you're not only when you're fishing tournaments, but if you're working when you're off the water and in between tournaments, I've taken the route that I should be creating a living through fishing and working enough for my sponsors where that overruns my tournament entry fees.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's actually very profitable if you could fish 2
Hmm.
tours. And the angler you had, even our boats, you make a profit off your boats. That was 2 boat profits he got
Yeah.
that year. So
Yeah.
it should be a very profitable venture, but I would never try it. That is a lot. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of traveling. I think that's definitely there's I'd rather put my energy somewhere else than 2 tournament trails for
Yeah.
sure. That's a lot, no
Yeah.
doubt.
So what does the future look like for Brian Latimer?
I'm gonna continue fishing the FLW tour, keep moving up the ranks there, and I've been working really hard on, I guess you would call the entertainment side of fishing. I've really that's something that kind of snuck up on me that I never knew that I'd be a part of. Didn't have any intentions or aspirations of doing it. It kind of happened out of struggle. Actually, I knew I needed to do something besides just tournament fish to make a living at fishing because that's all I ever saw myself doing. That
Mm-hmm.
whole end game was just fishing more and more. And so I started doing YouTube my rookie season on the FLW tour, and most of us anglers would do like a tournament recap. Most time it's only when you do well, and I always wanted to do something. I'm like, man, this is everybody's doing the same thing. I wanted to do something a little different, a little bit more authentic, something a little bit more that people got value out of. So I started vlogging. I think is the socially accepted
Mm-hmm.
term. Stuff that I did when I was at home during the off season. Then later on, I started vlogging my tournaments, my actual FLW tour tournaments, so you could see what I was doing behind the scenes and see what it's like traveling to events. And a lot of times on TV, all you see is the top 3 or 4 guys and how they caught them. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you get to see me when I finish 5th or 3rd, and you get to see me when I finish 123rd. When you watch mine, you get to see everything in between. So you get to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and some in the middle on my deal. And I started doing that out of just because I needed to. And then the more I did it, I started to like it.
Yeah.
And I think because I liked doing it, my audience started to grow. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I'm going to start doing it. So I started getting real serious about it. I used to do only a video when I had a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started doing 2 videos. Like, oh, this is how I'm prepping to go to such and such. And then it got to where I was doing stuff at home. And then I started doing, before you know, I put like 3 or 4 videos out a week. And so things just kept growing, growing. So I've been doing more and more of that. That's definitely going to be a part of this Brian Latimer fishing and all of that. That's going to be a part of that as far as I know, the rest of my life is the entertainment and the personality side of fishing and as well as the competition side.
Nice. Well, you
That's
got a
it.
good vision, man, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
far you've really been able to certainly take a path less traveled, if not a path that doesn't exist,
right.
and manage to make it while you're holding together everything else in your life.
Yeah.
That's to be
It's hard.
commended.
I appreciate it. It's hard and it's definitely been fun. I'm just glad I stuck with it because I could have easily just let it go.
Yeah.
And it was points where I probably did and I let it go and just picked it back up.
Yeah. So let me ask you a couple of questions as we wrap this thing up. One theme in here is that I'm noticing, and I'll see if it comes out in this question. But what's your definition of happiness?
Happiness is definitely waking up. For me, is waking up every morning, doing what I like to do, and going to sleep with a clear mind. That's all I want to do
Mm-hmm.
is wake up, hang out with the people that I love the most, and beat obstacles and do what I love to do. That's happy to me.
Yeah.
That's all I need. It's like I don't need the new stuff anymore. There was definitely a period in my life where I had to have things and stuff, but now I want to go places, do things with the people I love the most. That's the
Mm-hmm.
best part about it.
Nice. I
It
asked you
makes me
that
happy.
question because there was a theme going on there about your discontent with regrets.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's what we've been talking
Yeah.
about for an hour and a half here, is that there were certain decisions that
doubt.
you were making, and I just wanted to see if it came out in that
Yeah.
answer of what do you think is your definition of happiness. And of course it did, because living with regrets is, I think that's the worst.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, we got one life, and especially when you're younger, your 20s and 30s, I think, which now it seems like that gap is opening up a lot now. You have people in their 50s and 60s are really accomplishing and influencing a lot of people and a lot of things, doing huge things. But there's a lot that you can get done in those 30s and 40s. That's usually your wheelhouse where you get things done, and I want to take advantage of that, because that's usually when you're in your late 30s and your early 40s. You've lived long enough to have some direction, but you're young enough to where you have that tenacity and fire to execute on things. So yeah, regret is a terrible, terrible thing, and it's not to say that you can live your life without any regrets. I think that's unrealistic, honestly. But the thing is, learning from mistakes and regrets, I think, is the important factor there.
Yeah. And what would be your definition of success, or would that be different than your definition of happiness?
Oh, success, that's probably a deeper question and a deeper topic. Of course, being a fisherman, I always see, anytime you ask a question, I see it through the lens of fishing. And I don't know if that's good or bad, and if it actually accomplishes the goal of what we're doing here. But just thinking about tournament fishing, when you say success, it's hard to think about success without me going to the fishing.
Mhm.
Every day when I get up and go fishing, whether it's a tournament or practice or fishing at home, I got a little bit at home as well. I always tell people, like, I'm not really as romantic about where I finish in the standings as much as when I leave that venue or that lake or put my boat in the trailer. I want to know that, all right, I was smart enough to find a group of fish and go back to them and catch them, taking in all the circumstances that may happen, weather, rain, whatever, so forth. And when I fish good, I feel good and I feel like it's successful. Same thing. I know you can relate when you guide and then you find fish or figure out something, and you take a client back there and then they catch them, or they learn something. It's the best feeling in the world. That's success for me. That it's like this feeling you get when you study something, you do some research, you work towards it, and then there's the end goal. You see a good result. That's like success for me. And that can be just about anything, but being just a fisherman and being so obsessed with that, it always gets back to fishing. And I wish I could be real deep on that, but that's all I got. It's like when I go out fishing, think about it, see what happens, look at things around me, and things work out. That's successful. That's successful.
Perfect.
No matter where it lands, no matter where it puts me in the standings, or whether I end up at the end of the year making 30,000 or 130,000. It's just when I do good, I have a plan and I execute on plans. Just execution is successful.
Love it. I love it. Well, my friend, you got a full schedule ahead of you, and I wish you all the best of luck. I'll be following you along. Tell everybody how they can find you.
You can find me a lot of different ways on social, of course, Instagram, Facebook. On Facebook, it's at Brian Latimer Fishing. On Instagram, it's Brian_Latimer. And if you want to find me on YouTube, just my name, Brian Latimer. That's all you got to look up.
All right. Good luck to you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
You bet, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Brian Latimer's a stud. He's got a great attitude. Really wish him all the best of luck. Send us an email, podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. Let me know if you've got future guests you want me to interview. Maybe you've even got questions you want me to ask them. You can hear all past episodes on iTunes by searching Tom Rowland Podcast, or go to saltwaterexperience.com/podcast. You can also tag us on Instagram, Tom_Rowland, or tag our Saltwater Experience account. Look for Saltwater Experience on Instagram. We're pretty active there. Thanks, man. We'll see you next week.